Remember, cinema, like cricket in this country, is religion. Actors become iconic because they also became role models for people.
Ma'am, this reminds me of my last guest. She was an anti-rape activist. She voiced out that movies like Animal should be banned.
You see, I fell into a lot of trouble with the maker of the film, Kabir Singh. Because I had tweeted at a particular time that when formidable actors like a Shahid Kapoor do these kind of films, it leads to another kind of a generational change. Karmanya vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana. Just keep going at it.
Yes.
Imagine 10 months you rehearse a play and you do only 4 shows.
And ma'am, when we talk about the religious side of yours, like we were having a conversation, tell me about your belief in Neem Karoli Babaji.
You're very clever. I don't know how you found that out because I keep it very private. I think more than the religion part, it's spiritualism, and I think belief is something that gives a lot of hope and lot of support to someone like me. Go and read Jayashankar Prasad, and he wrote something about India and our consciousness, and that is a hallmark, I want to leave you with that thought. It went like, हिमाद्रि तुंग श्रृंग से प्रबुद्ध शुद्ध भारती स्वयं प्रभा समुज्ज्वला स्वतंत्रता पुकारती अमर्त्य वीर पुत्र हो दृढ़ प्रतिज्ञ सोच लो प्रशस्त पुण्य पंथ है बढ़े चलो सो फॉर द विमेन आगे बढ़ो बढ़े चलो should be your call. March on. Nobody is going to stop.
Before we begin, if this conversation gives you even a one new thought, adds a little bit of value to your life, then please subscribe. It will really help us going and help us bring more incredible voices like hers to you. She has represented India at Cannes, stood for women's voices in cinema and politics, and lives her life guided by faith and purpose. Please welcome Miss Vani Tripathi Tiku. Ma'am, I would really like to know about you as a person. You have so many layers into you, like films, politics, and activist. So what really inspired you? And how did you begin?
So I don't know. I mean, I had very interesting parents. They were both academics and they were writers. And I think I grew up in a community. I'm the only child. And unfortunately, both my parents are gone. I just lost my mother last year.
Really sorry.
And I think the first thing that they really taught me was that, one, you don't have to, it doesn't matter what gender you belong to, meaning because you're a girl or you're a woman, you can only think like this or speak like this or say things.
That is so important.
There was a lot of, because it was an academic household, there was a lot of free flow of knowledge and education and ideas. And me and my mother used to be constantly arguing about things from politics to economy to theatre. I started doing theatre when I was very young.
I know.
I was about just 10 years old.
Yeah.
And I think it was very much there. कहते हैं ना खून में कुछ चीजें बसी होती हैं. कुछ था जो stand out करता था. And I think I also had great gurus, from Barry John to Ibrahim Al-Qazi Saab. I'm his last batch of students. National School of Drama had a lot of, impact on my growing up because I started working at the Theatre and Education Company as a student, as a child, then as a casual actor, artist, and I finally became an actor teacher there, So I think the whole journey was very interesting. I was ready to do things which were not normal. Academics के बच्चे generally PhD करते हैं. And every time my father, both my parents were PhDs, and somebody asked, Bani never did a PhD. He used to say, uski kundali mein nahi likha hua tha. And this is how people used to laugh then. So I think I grew up in an atmosphere of a lot of education, lot of books. There were thousands of books around in my house. That had a lot of influence on me. And also there were a lot of young people at home. His students were an intrinsic part of my growing up. So I can say I was blessed that way. And a lot of people think that just literacy is education, सिर्फ शिक्षित होना ही education है. मुझे लगता है विचारों का आदान प्रदान. It's the give and take of thoughts and thought processes which learn you.
It's all about the mindset for sure. And I think the foundation in the childhood is very important to set your path in the right direction. And I think you were very lucky to have such great.
I was. And you know, absolutely rock star mother and a very, very liberated father who allowed me to do theatre. I mean, imagine I almost did college and drama school together, and I used to leave at 6 in the morning, come back at 11 at night. Delhi was not seen as a very safe space to travel alone. But I think despite all that, the firm belief that my parents had that I wanted to do something which was unique, and I wanted to exercise my choices as a person. And my father used to always say, a conscientiousness is all that I can give to her. Rest,
It's up to her to take.
up to her to deal with the life around her.
So you started with movies.
No, I started with theatre.
You started with
Theatre. Then Pooja Bhatt was making her first film, Dushman.
Yeah.
It was a first film for many people. It was Tanuja Chandra's first film as a director. It was Ashutosh Rana's first film as an actor. I was introduced in the film. They actually saw me in a play in Delhi. And I was working at the National School of Drama. And I was kicking my legs and I was saying, I don't want to go to Bombay. Because there was this disconnect which is not there anymore. Theatre people used to think the big bad world of the film industry is not what we like.
Yeah.
Delhiites and Mumbaikars always had that kind of a khai in the middle.
Right.
Which in so many ways the National School of Drama paved the way for today when you look at the content universe around you. You see a Pankaj Tripathi, you see a Nawazuddin Siddiqui, you see a Amrita Subhash, you've seen Nasir Bhai, you've seen Irfan Bhai, you've seen Om Puri ji, and so many other, you've seen Ashutosh Rana and Raghuveer Yadav and Neena Gupta. The list doesn't end. Anupam Kher and Rajpal Yadav and so many of them. So today, I think there is a lot of collaboration, but those years, I was very resistant to the idea of coming to Mumbai. I was so happy being the star, of so many plays, and I was also a singing actor. I used to sing on stage. I was trained in classical music. But one thing led to another. I came to do Dushman. Rest is history. I think for 21 years, I didn't go back.
Dushman, fir bhi dil hai
Hindustani.
Chalte chalte.
I was very blessed to work with somebody like a Shah Rukh Khan as a producer because he is such an amazing human being. I have to say both Juhi Chawla and Shah Rukh Khan were two amazing people very early in my career, and Aziz Mirza Saab, who directed both these films, and Saeed Saab, his other brother, who was known for Nukkad and all the amazing films that he made. My large body of work was between Tanuja Chandra and Bhatt Saab and Aziz uncle, I still call him uncle, and Saeed Saab. And I think this paved the way for a lot of work that I did, later. It was also almost like going to a university. So going to primary school later was very difficult,
Right.
which meant that the bar was so high for actors with all these directors, and they were so invested with the kind of stories they wanted to make, that I was very fortunate and very happy that I got to work with them. Frankly, I have no railway station stories to tell you. I came with work. I was very, very blessed that I had such amazing directors. Also, in television, I worked with some of the best. I worked with Ramesh Sippy Saab, who made Sholay. I worked with Raman Kumar, who gave us that amazing serial called Tara. Though I was not in Tara, but much later. He also wrote a lot of work for me. It was like a formidable relationship. I also did theatre with Ramanji, for IPTA Mumbai. And I think all that journey translated into some amazing work that I could do, for the next decade or so.
And today you celebrate the 25 years of Chuki. So
Yes, so tomorrow I have this amazing session at Vicky Frames where I'm talking to two women who are trailblazers in their own right. Smriti Irani, who 25 years ago was seen as a part-time politician and a full-time actor, and 25 years later, she says, I am a part-time actor and a full-time politician.
turned, yeah.
Generations of women impacted by her, and Ekta Kapoor, when we were in college, she was making films and television serials, which has impacted decades of generations of women. Trailblazers. I'm looking forward to the conversation tomorrow at Vicky Frames.
Yeah.
And I think both of them are women that have to be celebrated in every possible way, in India.
Correct. So, ma'am, don't you believe that, life is also a lot about destiny sometimes? Like, we do our hard work, but also destiny has a major role to play in it.
Smriti, I believe that the Bhagavad Gita is a very good testament for what our lives are, especially as actors and as artists. Karmanya vadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachina. Just keep going at it.
Yes.
Imagine 10 months you rehearse a play and you do only 4 shows. If you look at the stock market index, it's a terrible investment to make. But these are the journeys we've all had as theatre actors. And this is the hard work which has paved way. This is the karma that has paved way for who we are.
Yeah.
So I think destiny is a very far out word for me.
Okay.
I think it is the karma that you do each day as an actor, as an artist. You can't be lackadaisical, even if you make it in life in so many ways. It is the way you work at your craft. That is what paves way for who you are as a person.
So, you believe in just doing good?
Karma. I believe I'm a karma yogi. I believe in karma. Just keep going at it. And I think the rest will follow suit.
Correct. That is wonderfully put, ma'am. I also read your tweet about, just being few hours away from the Air India to London flight, from Ahmedabad to London flight. I mean, that was a major mishap of this year.
Yes. So actually, I was on the Air India brand new fleet, that flight between Mumbai and London. But it's such a beautiful aircraft. And I have supported Air India because I think as a national carrier, it's very easy. हमारी एक आदत है हम पत्थर बहुत फेंकते हैं. I know there are so many things they don't get right. There have been flights on which even I have felt very slighted. But that doesn't mean that we don't stand up when it comes to an iconic aviation, parallel like Air India, which stands for the country, the country we belong to. So I was on that London flight that very night. And a lot of my friends saw my Insta post and tweet and they thought I'm on the Ahmedabad flight.
Oh my God.
Actually, on this flight, there was no Wi-Fi. So by the time I landed, I was getting messages throughout. No, sorry, there was Wi-Fi and there was messaging, but I couldn't see any live news. Like sometimes on the flight, you can see live news. I kept thinking at about 1:30 a.m., 2 o'clock, I was writing something. On most flights, I read, I write, I barely sleep. So there is a, lot of constructive work on a 9-10 hour flight that I'm able to do. And I'm just seeing these messages and I'm like, why is everybody asking me if I'm safe? What happened? And as I landed into Heathrow is the time that I saw the tragedy, and of course, I was taken aback. And I wrote that morning that, of course, the heart goes out to those families. It was a massive tragedy. I also saw its impact in London as I reached there, and for the next week and a half. In fact, I was at the Global India Forum and I was doing a massive session with Rahman sir, with A.R. Rahman Saab. And I could see the shadow of sadness, even during the forum. And, the awards night, that particular week at IGF was cancelled. But I also say that it's also sheer resilience on the part of the people who were involved in the tragedy. And also, जिसे हम हिंदी में कहते हैं, जिंदगी कितनी क्षणभंगुर है. It is so much momentous.
Yes.
1 minute you are there and 1 minute you are gone.
Yes.
again, coming to the karma philosophy.
I think there was a family, 5 people,
Yeah.
all of them there.
Yeah, and it was very heartbreaking to see those stories. And that one man who survived.
What were the chances?
What were the chances? Maybe when you say something, what is destiny? Maybe that is destiny. But I again say, all the more the reason, coming back to the karma philosophy, just keep doing good. Something good will happen.
Ma'am, tell me more about your work in the censor board.
Good you're asking me this, because barely anybody asks what the certification. Actually, the word censor is a very old term. It was used in the 1930s when we were still a British colony. Censorship is a wrong word. It should be called the Film Certification Board. CBFC is a Central Board of Film Certification, right? Of course, it's been 11 years that I've been on the board. It is a very popularly unpopular thing to bring back the certification board. I understand there are a lot of things at stake when somebody's film is certified. So let me tell you, the process is like this, that I as a board member only walk in at the last stage where there's a revising committee. The first step is called the examining committee, where the regional officer sits with a panel of 6 members or 7 members. With me, there are about 8 members. That is the last step, of certification, when there's a dissent or when the producer is not happy with the certification given at the examining committee, or there is some kind of opinion where the film doesn't get certified, at the last stage, the stage before, which is the examining committee. Like a jury, it's a democratic process. The Cinematograph Act of 1952 clearly says that there has to be consensus opinion on certification, which means all the members, the 8+1, me as a presiding officer, have to be on the same page, whether it's for universal viewing or adult viewing, or now there are more ratings like a 13+ and a 16+, which is very democratic. And very happy to say that the government of the time took the initiative of increasing the certification, paradigms. But, lot of people get involved in the narrative of which film did not get certified, why modifications. I don't believe in the term cuts. There's things which can be modified. And remember, there are a couple of things which are non-negotiable. Like this board, from the time this came into the second board under the chairmanship of Mr. Prasoon Joshi, objectification of women was very seriously looked at.
All right.
Remember all those songs where women were called various things, the Munnis were becoming Badnams, and the Sheilas and their Javanis were being discussed?
Yes.
It's all very well to look it from the outside and say, oh, so what, it was a song. Remember, cinema, like cricket in this country, is religion.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Actors become iconic because they also became role models for people. It is a collective responsibility. And I always tell, today I'm also a film producer, I always tell people, if garbage is not produced, garbage will not be consumed.
Of course.
So it's a shared responsibility between the creators and the people who are consuming it. I also tell the audience, if you will shun away, if you will shy away from looking at the objectification of women, and it will stop being created. So creation is a process of observation.
Of course.
Who's being observed and who's observing it is a part of the journey which is also being created. But let me also tell you, it's a difficult job to do. As a creator, when you also become a regulator, it's not an easy boat to sail. It's a difficult one.
Because, ma'am, aaj bhi the audience likes to hear such songs and look at those adult scenes. They really enjoy if you talk about the maturity.
I don't think so. It used to be the norm. But if you look at the last decade, you will see that people will celebrate Vidya Balan for a difficult role like Dirty Picture. But when a woman is being objectified, you will today see that the audience will question it. And I'm not just talking about the women rights activists or the feminists. I am talking about the audience at large. Look at your generation. The youngsters today don't want crass content.
Yeah.
There's a difference between realistic content and crass content. There's a difference between what is cheap and objectification related and what is actually looking at life in its realistic form. The good part is today's cinema is more audacious, The narratives are very real. There is a lot of conversation around not being just beautiful,
Yes.
but also looking at what was not looked at being beautiful. For example, the color of the skin.
Of course.
For example,
Shape of the body.
the shape of the body and how we had been shaming women. The gun-toting hero with 35 goons and a babe in the woods who has to be rescued is completely out now. Why? Because audience response is equally related to what is being created as content today. I think that's a very important responsibility. And I think as a society, as a country, we are very responsible towards that now. It's work in progress. I'm not saying all of that has been covered. In the Western societies, for example, you asked me a question about certification. Remember, every country in the world had a certification board.
Okay.
But there is a differentiation, there is a cultural nuance to every country. In France, frontal nudity is not a problem. Gangster films is a problem.
Okay.
In America, there won't be a Francis Ford Coppola, there won't be a Godfather if gangster films were a problem. But frontal nudity is a problem. So every country has a cultural nuance. India also has a cultural nuance. We believe that a certain kind of typification does not gel well with the kind of society we are. And I think films have to be certified according to that.
And ma'am, this is applicable to OTT releases also?
No. So the Central Board of Film Certification is only about the theatrical releases of films.
Okay.
OTT is by far self-regulated.
All right.
And there are 3-4 layers of, whenever there's a complaint, there is an addressal committee. When it is internal, then the industry bodies look at it. And finally, it goes to some larger body, which is connected to the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting. But I think OTT by far is more about self-regulation and looking at, classification from the way they look at content. But remember, a lot of films which are theatrical releases are certified by CBFC. And as it is, they are, shown on the OTT platforms today as certified by CBFC. But CBFC is only about theatrical releases.
So ma'am, even if the one member says against...
Yeah, if there's a dissent, there has to be a consensus. There has to be a democratic consensus within the certification panel, which is viewing the film.
And what is the process of modifying the content then? If suppose you find something which is not
So
suitable?
there is a lot of give and take. Remember, this is not a monolith. The producers also have a lot of conversation with the panel.
All right.
So by the end of the screening, the producer walks in and there is a lot of conversation. Sometimes it goes on for hours. That's why I'm saying it's a democratic process. It is not that you can't do this, you can't do that. And banning is a word that does not lie with the CBFC.
Okay.
We cannot ban a film. There is no question of the word BAN, which headlines scream all the time. We can just say that there's a dissent. This is what the panel feels. Then the producer. So also remember, the producers also have a bargaining power. They sometimes say, no, we want a universal certification. So then the panels, continue in their conversation and they say that, well, certification can happen, but a universal will mean these many cuss words or these many, So remember, universal is for below 13. Universal adult is for 13 plus and now also 16 plus. Each age group, today when you look at, the way content is consumed, has a mind of its own. But what is deemed correct for a 13-year-old will not have heft with a 16-year-old. So this differentiation is a differentiation of age-related classification. Why do we have such a large song and dance about, if there is when you look at the Western films, there is a PG, there is a PG plus, and there is a A. There is a restricted category also, which we still don't have in India. It relates to what is correct for a certain age group and what is incorrect for another. Also remember, what bothers me a lot is violence and children. The kind of deep-rooted impact that violence has on impressionable young minds. I think that is something we should be very mindful of, and that is something which personally bothers me as much as objectification of women.
Ma'am, this reminds me of my last guest. She was an anti-rape activist. She voiced out that movies like Animal should be banned. I don't know what
You see, I fell into a lot of trouble with the maker of the film, Kabir Singh, because I had tweeted at a particular time that when formidable actors like a Shahid Kapoor do these kind of films, it leads to another kind of a generational change. Now, of course, the maker of the film did not take it very well. He pointedly pointed me out at that time. Let me tell you, if we will normalize violence against women, and I'm saying this with great responsibility, I'm saying this not just as a CBFC board member, I'm saying this as a woman, I'm saying this as a creator, I'm saying this as an actor and a film producer today.
Yes.
When we normalize violence, when we normalize rape, and we normalize the way that gaze about women is, it does not help society at large. Let me give you an example. It's a very cinematic example. When you're shooting a violent scene, is the camera a top angle or is the camera between the legs of a woman? That's it. That is where the buck should stop, which means who is pandering to a voyeuristic mentality and who is looking at it from a point of view of a societal, influence. That is the difference when it comes between looking at violence against women. And if, as a filmmaker, as a storyteller, you're mindful of the gaze, Hindi में एक शब्द है नियत. आपकी नियत पता चल जाएगी जब फिल्म खुलेगी. And rest, it is between the God and the audience, as we say. The audience will decipher what kind of films you're making.
And ma'am, I have the sudden thought of my own. What about movies like Mrs., wherein they're depicting a typical stereotypical role of a woman, where she has to just manage the house?
You see, there will be stereotypes when you will look at society around you. Patriarchy is not something that you only see as far as big conference halls or seminars is concerned. Patriarchy is very within.
Correct.
It's very within society, and we shouldn't just kick our own selves. You see patriarchy in most societies of the world. And yes, men are threatened when they see powerful, audacious, courageous women
Correct.
around them. Women who have a sense of choice become a threat to most of the male chauvinistic gaze of, our own narratives. So similarly, again, it's the intent. When you're showing a woman in a stereotypical role, are you doing it as a conversation that you wish to start? Or are you doing it just because you are also a party to that patriarchal narrative?
That movie definitely sparked a lot of conversations, because we obviously were very against the role that was depicted, because I think that no longer is the scenario. We have evolved.
That's what I'm saying, that audience observation is very much a part to creation of content today. I cannot sit in a bubble and say, now I'm going to make a film which is all about what I think.
Correct.
Eventually, it has to go to a larger mass of people, and how they respond to it is very much a part of the conversation.
Right. And ma'am, you wrote an article on Chamkila also.
Yes.
I think that was a major conflict in your mind.
Well, I was conflicted initially, but I will tell you there is one line in that beautiful film. One, I must tell you something about Imtiaz Ali. He was my senior in Hindu college and we used to do theatre together. So I think Imtiaz is somebody, and the way he wants to tell stories is something that I know of very well, because I've lived a large part of my college life in and around Imtiaz. The Hindu College Theatre Society was re-enlivened by us. It was called Ibtada. And we did some amazing plays like Holi, written by Mahesh L. Kunchwar, Sakharam Binder, and so on. And Holi was so iconic that I think we traveled the whole country. And Imtiaz directed it. So, of course, coming to the conflict part, there's this one very beautiful line in the film. जब तक हम हैं, हम स्टेज पर हैं, जीते जी मर जाएं, इससे तो अच्छा है कि मरकर जिंदा रहें.
Yeah.
I think that is the underlying reality of telling the story of Chamkila. What he stood for, whether he was a warrior, he had lewd lyrics, is just, a side story. As an artist, the kind of popularity he had, the relationship he had with his lover who became his wife later, and they had a long journey together. And he was torn apart between two systems. One system called him pro, the terrorism that was happening in Punjab, and the other thought he was a stooge of the system and the police. So look at his irony, look at the diabolism that, became the high point of his life and also led to his death, the way he was assassinated. So despite the conflict, and I've written categorically how conflicted I could have been being on the certification board when I saw the film. But the journey of the film was so poignant. Again, the gaze that Imtiaz gave, the music that Rahman sir, gave to that film, and the poignancy with which Diljit Dosanjh played that character, it leaves you with more questions than answers. And it leaves you with a conversation. You're conflicted by the end of the film, where you realize that do artists, should they be met with, a end that he was met with just because he was popular? Just because he did not comply with the so-called system, and just because he spoke to the audience directly. When you are on stage, and that is the difference between doing a theatre play and being in a film, you're directly talking to a live scenario. You will make or break right there, because people will either applaud you or they will throw tomato at you. Correct. It's right there.
I think it's again about the intent with which the film was made.
And I think it has so many conversations which I, as an artist over the years, have had within my own self and have not been able to speak about them. So the film spoke to me just at another level.
Yes, I think it received a very good response.
It was a beautifully made film, and the craft of the film was so artistic. And again, I'm saying that it spoke to me in that reality, whether you want to immortalize yourself even after you're gone, or you die each day, and that becomes a reality for your soul.
That is very deep, something to think about. Yeah. I think each one of us should try to do something in life that you're remembered by later on.
Yeah.
And ma'am, how was your experience at the Cannes Film Festival? I think that marked 75 years of the film.
Yeah. So, it was a very opportune year. It was the 75th independence anniversary, of our country. And it was the 75th year of the Cannes Film Festival. So a 75 met a 75, beautifully crafted. India was the honor country for the first time with the Marshidu film. And yes, I was. But again, I will not pander to my gender.
Yes.
I think we all were representing great narratives of Indian cinema. And thankful to the government of India and the then Minister Anurag Singh Thakur ji that he thought of all of us, from a Madhavan to a Rahman sir to a Nawazuddin Siddiqui. Imagine Nawaz's work has been so much celebrated the factor to remember here is that we were at the red carpet representing a nation and representing a film industry, and with all the linguistic diversities that all of us belong to, and a Ricky Cage and a amazing folk singer from Rajasthan. I think all of us put together were the representation of this amazing country that we belong to, called India.
I think India is one of those countries which is culturally very rich.
We are. So remember, every 50 kilometers, our food changes, our language changes, our cultural nuance changes, the way we dress up changes. Where will you find such diversity? So the celebration of Indian cinema, at such a beautiful juncture of the 75th year of our independence, very proud moment.
Very proud.
And I think at the Cannes Film Festival, I have constantly been a regular, whether it was my work at the International Film Festival of India, Goa, looking at films, bringing it, to the festival, or whether it was championing the cause of independent cinema, which nobody does better than a Cannes, and then of course a Toronto and a Berlin, all these festivals, as Sundance and so many festivals. But Cannes is also one of the most important film markets for independent filmmakers from India and Asia at large.
Correct. Ma'am, so where do you think India stands when it comes to theatres, movies? Are we the only country which is so diverse in producing the content?
I think we are a content hub of the world today because we are the largest film producing nation of the world.
Okay.
We are. In
Yeah.
sheer numbers, nobody makes more films
Then us.
across formats, across languages, across, the board. We are the largest film producing nation of the world. But it also leaves us with a responsibility that the global gaze, which is now on Indian cinema, Payal Kapadia winning the Cannes Film Festival last year is a big deal. Shaji sir won it, Shaji Karun sir, 30 years ago, and she broke that. Imagine what a celebration of great, Indian cinema from the Indian ethos. A woman filmmaker with such great, audacious actors, in the film. And I think it's been a great year. Past few years have been great. This year at Toronto, you had a film in Brij Bhasha called Vimukt, which got a standing ovation. You had Homebound at Cannes, which got more than a 10-minute ovation. You saw at Venice, this year, an Indian filmmaker won, who's a woman. And across board at Uncertain Regard, last year, this year at Cannes. So I think now the international big journey of Indian cinema going global is all coming together. It's a great time to make films. And for women filmmakers, I think there is a wonderful time ahead, because there is so much more funding. The National Film Development Corporation is doing so much. NFDC is doing so much. I'm on the board of Women in Film. Just today, we were putting our heads together to looking at the way forward, which has a Guneet Monga, which spearheads it. There's a Karan Johar, there's a Ekta Kapoor, there's a Taira Kashyap. There are so many people. Aparna Purohit, who's now with Amir Khan Films as the CEO, who was heading Amazon till a while ago. So when you look at, there's a Siddharth Roy Kapoor. So there are narratives which are gender agnostic. It doesn't matter men or women. Women filmmakers, women storytellers are the centerpiece of a great global narrative for Indian cinema today.
So there's a huge transition.
Huge heft. There is a huge heft, and there's a great journey that women filmmakers are able to, unleash. I'm not saying that it's all done. It's still work in progress, but I think great days ahead.
Ma'am, we're really looking forward, and I think we're very lucky to consume such great content in India.
Yeah, absolutely.
And ma'am, if we talk about your journey in politics as the former national secretary of BJP, how was it like?
Well, all world is a stage, and we are all actors.
What in
Politics, I think Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji for the amazing work in 2004 when I came into the party, and the amazing man that he was. Remember, this one poem that he wrote was literally the hallmark of my whole career in politics. टूटे हुए सपनों की सुने कौन सिसकी, अंतर को चीर व्यथा पलकों पर ठिठकी, हार नहीं मानूंगा रार नहीं ठानूंगा, काल के कपाल पर लिखता मिटाता हूँ, गीत नया गाता हूँ. This poet prime minister that we had, and the kind of work he did, which paved way for another 10 years of a party which was out of power.
Correct.
And those were the years,
Correct.
the organizational reality, and then the rise of an amazing leader like Honorable Prime Minister today, Narendra Modi ji. And today, in the last 11 years, the kind of work, the Bharatiya Janata Party and the government has done. Today, being in so many states and having such an amazing stint at leadership. But for me, Atalji stood out for that statesman and a leader that he was. And that was the very reason, I joined the party. I was not in student politics. I want to put it on record. I was never interested in politics. Theatre was my religion. It still is today. But I think, and as the late Arun Jaitley ji, who was a big champion of also women, and also Sushma Swaraj ji, who's also no more, two big leaders of the party who were like ideals and mentors, and Nitin Gadkari ji, who brought me in his national team, who's now one of the best, performing ministers of the government. Arunji used to say, if young professionals will come into politics, it will cleanse the system.
Of course.
And I think this is what Bharatiya Janata Party stood for. One, it was a parivar. It still is. Still the extended family is all the colleagues that I had from the party then to now. And also professionalism, which is a hallmark of organizational work at the BJP. And still, when you look at the party, the way it is run, the way it campaigns and manages elections, and the way it goes right into the middle of the people. And the top person, when you look at the Prime Minister, you see somebody who's a Sangathanatmak Acharya, as I call him. He is the head of the organization in the country. And that is what the BJP stands for.
It's like a people's party.
Absolutely, and democratic.
Yes.
I, inside the party, was one of the youngest of the lot, and I used to argue so much with everybody, and I was heard, and there was democracy, and we could talk to each other, and we could find solutions for what we needed to do. Remember also what you saw as this hallmark bill of the 33% reservation for women, which finally got passed now in the parliament, is something that was being rooted by the BJP in the very years when we were not in power. Two leaders of opposition that we had, Arun Jaitley ji and Sushma ji, were the harbingers of that bill, which constantly, kept coming back to the parliament because there was their single-minded dedication of these two people that women representation is the epitome of governance. For the West, sometimes reservation is a very taboo kind of a topic. For India, it's a social leverage for women to be in leadership positions. So any reservation, which all started from the panchayat samitis to the corporations to then the, local state elections. And then finally in 2029, you will see it roll out. I think it's an iconic bill to pass in the parliament. And that is what has made women the centerpiece of leadership.
So, Mom, America has never had a female president. Isn't that true?
Because, somebody asked Hillary Clinton once why she wears such bright colors, when she was, at the seat of power. She would always wear a sunrise yellow or a, midnight blue, which always would, And she said, that is the only way you stand out in a photo of men in dark suits. What does it tell you?
It speaks
A country which talks so much about democracy has barely any women leadership.
Yes.
And within their own Senate and state, there are a lot of women who are there in the corporate sector, but you don't find that level of political leadership. Remember, India from day one since its independence had given the right to vote to the women. And that right to vote, which came many decades later in the United States, is also one of the reasons. That is why the women's suffrage movement was so big in the United States. So looking at India today, the cusp of change is that we gave women equal opportunities of electorate and being elected.
Correct.
And that right to franchise has finally led to this amazing unleashing of what you see as leadership.
So I had two national spokespersons of BJP on my podcast, Radhika Khera ji and Shazia Elmi ji. They both said such wonderful things about the party and how the party welcomed them with open arms, because I think they both transitioned from other parties.
Yeah.
So it was really good to know.
And also when you look at a Shazia Elmi, you see somebody who could be called a minority face of the BJP, but I think she transcends all of that with the way she is, on national TV every day and continues to be, the communication agent, the vehicle of communication for the party, each day.
Yeah, that's right. And ma'am, if we talk about, abhi aajkal this is a lot, on the news, not on the news, but a topic amongst us about the Apple, which is launched the 17 series in the saffron color. Do you think this is a cultural marketing gimmick or?
No, but why should we call it cultural marketing gimmick? Saffron is a color of prosperity. Bhagwa is not just color of a religion or a party. Across India, when the harvest festival happens, you see kesari all over, whether it was Punjab, whether it is Uttar Pradesh, all across Rajasthan, even down south. What does the color saffron? Why do we always create an identity stigma to, colors, For example, why should blue just stand for just one kind of a consciousness in the country or green for another? All these colors are the colors of the tricolor of the country. And these colors stand for prosperity, for development, for progress. And if a company goes forward and does it, I think it's a welcome change. I mean, how much of white and black and gray do we see around us? Why should another color not become an insignia? I don't attach any importance to, something becoming a marketing gimmick. Rather, kesari or bhagwa or saffron is a very progressive color. It gives me a lot of hope and gives me a lot of happiness. I think for the young of the country which change their phones every 6 months, I think that will become, part of their communicative realities and they will react accordingly.
A lot of people posted a picture with the phone, with the saffron color phone, and they said we are the supporters of BJP.
That again, it's a democracy, it's a democratic country. Who the youth wants to stand with is entirely their prerogative. We can, discuss this till the cows come home. But I think the youth of India today, the under 35 segment is extremely intelligent, very, very quick on its heels. Yes, it's also a dangerous opine window, 30 seconds of a make or break, you're a hero or you're a zero. But having said that, they know their minds and it's a democracy. People...
I think they have their own very strong opinions now.
And why shouldn't they?
Yes.
They should have their opinions. Why should the young of a young country, we are a very old civilization, we are a very young country, all the narrative which goes out, whether it's Instagram, whether it's social media, whether it is, making reels, they are constantly communicating with their own lot. And if they are doing that, I think it's fantastic that these communicative realities are so vibrant today.
And ma'am, another mastermind who's launched Aratai, an Indian WhatsApp application.
Yeah.
Do you think that we're leading towards digital sovereignty?
You see, I personally feel that communication is not the, monopoly of the few. So when it comes to telecom and communicative realities, we as a country, you're seeing such a huge bullish market for many things, including microchips, and now they will be produced in India. And the Prime Minister has just launched such an amazing project. I think anybody who thinks innovative, for example, Google AI is doing some amazing work in India. And in the next few months, you will see how it will play out as a major story. Today, almost 70% of animation of all of European countries and Hollywood happens in India. Do we even pay attention to how much of make in India it is? So I think anything that is innovative and anything which creates more communication for our own selves should be welcome. And there is a large section of the people who will respond to it, will take to it, and we will know how it plays out. I mean, sovereignty cannot just be defined in a limited kind of a sense. Democracy and sovereignty have to be widespread and they have to be all-encompassing.
Correct. Ma'am, Prime Minister's Make in India campaign is it's like an eye-opener. We need Indians to stay back, not go out and study, spend more on tourism here. We have such beautiful places, like the way he promoted Lakshadweep Islands also.
But why are we so enamored by the Western idea of taking a vacation? I travel across India all the time. And I think because of my theatre and then my political work, I have probably traveled to every single state of the country over many, many years. There are hidden gems all over. And I think when the Prime Minister says that this is about the outreach of our own, he's very right in saying so. Try going scuba diving in the Andaman Islands.
Exactly.
It will be an eye-opener for you. I'm not saying that you do a comparable, that is anything less than us or we are anything less than the other. But I think our country is so diverse, it's so rich, it's so beautiful that I think we should definitely employ and exhibit equal amount of, resource for our own selves
It's like
as we do for
embracing your country.
this, taboo, this fashion. Oh, now we are going here, we are going there. We spend so much. It's all fine, but I think knowing your own country should be very much a part of, exploring ourselves.
Correct.
I constantly do it. I thoroughly enjoy it.
I think we all must do that. India is a beautiful country if you go into the depths of it.
Yeah.
Places like Coorg, then as beautiful or maybe even more beautiful than New Zealand.
Yeah.
We just have to explore.
Yeah.
And ma'am, when we talk about the religious side of yours, like we were having a conversation, tell me about your belief in Neem Karoli Babaji.
You're very clever. I don't know how you found that out because I keep it very private. I think more than the religion part, it's spiritualism. And I think belief is something that gives a lot of hope and lot of, support to someone like me. Because I lost both my parents and my mother's just gone, Baba is somebody who centers my energies. Because I think when you believe in a guru, there's also total surrender there. Otherwise, we are resisting all the time. Also, as women, we resist. No, we have to resist so many things. There's so much pushback on so many things that sometimes being conflicted itself is something that you have to deal with. And I think Baba Neem Karoli is one of those sages, amazing spiritual sages of India and a guru who never just gave you gyan. It is just, belief in him that has given me a lot of courage and lot of confidence for many, many years now. I almost feel that I owe my life to him. Also, we are Pahadis. My parents were from Uttaranchal. And in Almora and in our belt, Baba Neem Karoli is somebody who's seen as Jivan Rakshak. He's a lifesaver. Because he's also seen as a living incarnate of Hanumanji, and also, that whole Sankat Mochan, he's seen as a Sankat Mochan. And I'm born on Guru Purnima.
Oh.
That is my Hindu Tithi birthday.
Okay.
So I try my best that every Guru Purnima I should go and do dhyan at my Guru's, samadhi. And that is what takes me to Kenchi, and he lives inside of me.
There's so much positivity even today in that temple.
Yeah, it's one of the most. It's just such a simplistic place that when you go there, you just feel the energy and the vibe. And with Baba, I think from my very, very, very little years of childhood, when I was very little, there is a very deep connect. Also, my parents, especially my father, who also I call Baba. I used to call my father Baba. There was a very deep connect with Neem Karoli Baba. And I think that is one gene I carry. And I'm very proud of it. But also, it's a very private affair. I keep it very quiet. Every year on Guru Purnima, I definitely try my best if I can reach Kenchi. And I think it gives me a lot of solace and peace. And that is what he stands for.
And ma'am, there are so many stories also of the people whose wishes came true or something miraculous happened in their life when they seeked guidance under him or his blessings. There is a power out there.
Absolutely. And he has his leelas.
Yeah.
Unki leela hai. And he makes things happen. And each time I have been on some kind of a crossroad in life, I feel Baba has always shown me the way, and he continues to do so.
That gives a lot of strength.
Yes, and he lives, I know that he lives in my heart. He gives me energy, and I just feel him. I feel him all the time.
So ma'am, Bareilly, my hometown is just 3 hours away from that temple. I've been there so many times whenever I face I was at a crossroads. And there is some magic out there, and I believe so.
Yeah. Maybe the reason you're talking me today is also one of the leaders that Baptite is doing.
I'm honored.
I mean-
So beautiful. It's my first time in Mumbai today.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I'm so
So
glad.
the big bad world of this maximum city. No, Mumbai is an amazing city. Let me say this to you. It's really my karma bhumi. And I feel that Mumbai is a city which is like the sea.
Yeah.
The sea takes in everybody in its, कहते हैं ना, आगोश में भर लेना. It is almost like that, it comes and hugs you so beautifully. You could be from anywhere and you could be a somebody, you could be a nobody. The vibe is so high of being in Mumbai, and that's why it's called the maximum city, and this city never sleeps.
It's a city of dreams.
And 2:30 in the morning, you can have chai on the road. 3 o'clock in the morning, you can eat on the road. And, it's all fresh food available through the night.
And I think most important, it is safe as compared to Delhi, where I come from. And we can't do that in Delhi.
Yeah.
So were you always, no, you were in Delhi initially.
I was born and brought up in Delhi. I studied in Delhi. And today also my home is Delhi, though I'm a global citizen. I don't know where all I stay now. But yeah, Delhi is a very important and intrinsic part of my consciousness. And I will always remain a Delhi wali, despite the fact that I love Mumbai. Yeah. But Delhi is what is home.
Yeah. And ma'am, any bites on your upcoming movies that you're producing?
Yeah, so I'm working on, I'm a little stubborn. And that's why sometimes people also find me. Jane Goodall, who just passed away, said something very interesting. Yeah, women are difficult, and then there are so many of us,
Yeah.
Sometimes there are so many of us. I want to create stories, content, films on Indian literature. This is also ode to my parents. And when I look at a 7.5-year-old daughter that I have, I wonder that Insta Reels can't be her, influence for the rest of her life. Though she's very young and she's still not very exposed, I try my best, to keep her away from social media as yet. But I think we have to retell our epics. And maine zid pakdi hai. I'm acquiring books which are timeless, contemporary literature and also classics. And all I can say is I'm developing projects which are book acquisitions right now. And right now I'm in the middle of one. I'm on an NDA, so I can't reveal too much. But yes, it will take us back to 100 years ago.
Wow.
And how India was. And if I land it well, I think I would have created, and I want to create many of those indigenous Indian characters from India which can go global. And I think books and literature is what is exciting me a lot right now. And I'm dedicated to the cause of creating, stories which are taken from literature across India, not just Hindi, Marathi, Bangla, Odia, Punjabi. There is such amazing literature which is undiscovered, especially to content creators. In the literary field, when I look at the Sahitya Academy and their work, I was just in Patna 5 days ago at the amazing literature festival that Sahitya Academy did this year, which was an international festival. But to content creators and to filmmakers and creators in India, so many of them still have to discover so many narratives from literature.
I think that'll be very, very...
So that's all that I'm doing, and that's all that I want to do for the next
But that is an amazing, amazing initiative that we've taken.
Yeah.
We really need to circle back to our roots and learn more about our own heritage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think if we start paying attention to what there's a word Gen Z everybody's saying.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about just the Zen XYZ. The generation next and the one after that, it is our collective responsibility to tell them stories about our civilization, our culture, and our linguistic reality. And if we will fall short of doing so, then there is nothing else then it's more and more McDonald's, it's more and more denim pants. I have no problem with these. Let me say on record, all influences are important, as Bapu said, that open the vistas to your mind, let all the hawa, all the breeze come in. But the ecosystem of our culture, who we are, what the indigenous stories of India are, agar abhi bhi humne wo nahi batai, then you can't turn around and say, why only that? That is the outside reference point. It is our fault that when the time was ripe, and again I'm saying Indian story is going global, the time is now. This will never be negotiated. See, I'm work in progress myself. I am not saying that I've achieved all, I know it all, no. But there are few things I've learned. One is dare to dream. And dreaming is not just sleeping and dreaming. You and I are talking and maybe we are creating a dream now. More and more collaboration. Sisterhood is not a bad word. If brotherhood is a good word, sisterhood is an equally important word. And again, women for women is a narrative. It has to go beyond just gender identities, which means when Sofia Coppola wins at the Cannes Film Festival, she wins for all. Payal Kapadia wins for all. So collaborations and narratives of sisterhood coming together, number 2. And number 3, let's tell our stories now. Even if they are not pretty, even if they are ugly, non-judgmental sense, tell the stories now, because the observation of those stories will happen a decade or 2 later. So the time is now, but we are a land of kathavachaks. Every nook and corner, ek kona kona chappa chappa is desh ka kahaniyan hai. Let's bring those kathas out. This is the time to bring the stories out. I almost want to put it on record that I want to have an all-woman unit, including my sport girls to be women. And there are friends of mine, Nikhil Advani, Monisha Advani, MA, they actually went ahead and did it. People were just speaking about it for many years. Give the chance to those lovely young girls and women in the country to become technicians, to become editors, to become writers, to be cinematographers. One misnomer, वो 100 किलो का कैमरा कैसे लेके घूमेगी? वो बिल्कुल लेके घूमेगी, वो बच्चे लेके घूमती है. Why is it so difficult? So again, these collaborations are real and these are natural collaborations which need to help. That horrible idea that women don't stand up for each other, they do. But what? The men sometimes block those and they are firewalled and those narratives don't come out. So come out and tell your stories. You have the phone now in your hand. Shoot the stories. If you can make reels, you can also make stories about your own self, about your consciousness, about the world around you. What is making you stop? I will want to end one of my favorite poets of Hindi literature is Jaishankar Prasad. And remember, he was a feminist. He wrote Kamaini, he wrote Swamini. A lot of people hearing your podcast would not know, but I want you to remember, go and read Jaishankar Prasad. And he wrote something about India and our consciousness. And that is a hallmark, I want to leave you with that thought. It went like, हिमाद्रि तुंग श्रृंग से प्रबुद्ध शुद्ध भारती स्वयं प्रभा समुज्वला स्वतंत्रता पुकारिती अमर्त्य वीर पुत्र हो दृढ़ प्रतिज्ञ सोच लो प्रशस्त पुण्य पंथ है बढ़े चलो. So for the women, आगे बढ़ो बढ़े चलो should be your call. March on. Nobody is going to stop you.
Thank you for watching this episode. If Vaniji's story gave you a new perspective or a reason to think, please do like, comment and share with at least one woman who you think will resonate with this episode. Every time you engage with our platform, it gives us a stronger reason to bring India's more powerful voices to you. Because here at Fem Forward, we don't believe it is just a show. In fact, for us, it is a movement towards an empowered woman's journey.